Okay, good morning, everyone, and welcome to the 9 o'clock section of Parental Alienation, Law and Practice. I'll begin by introducing our speakers and our presenters. For the first presentation, Parental Alienation Case Law Analysis from the Irish High Court and European Court of Human Rights, we have Andrew Doyle. Andrew Doyle is a postgraduate researcher in University College Cork, Ireland, in children's rights in high-conflict family separations. We also have Parental Alienation in Portugal, Between Evolution and Convictions by ECHR, Sandra Feiter, and I apologize if I'm not pronouncing names correctly. Dr. Feiter is an attorney with a PhD in law, and her legal scholarship focused on the topic of parental alienation. She will be giving a Zoom presentation. Next, we have How to Manage and Present the Legal Case Responsive to PA Dynamics, Parental Alienation Dynamics, by Brian Ludmer. Brian Ludmer is a skilled attorney in business and family law. His practice focuses on high-conflict divorce, parental alienation, and high-net-worth property and income disputes. Additionally, we have Researching PA as a Guardian ad litem in the Netherlands, and that's by Helene Koppejan-Luitz. I apologize if I'm mispronouncing. Koppejanluitze. She is a psychologist who has graduated cum laude on research on parental alienation. She is often assigned by court, either as a guardian, civil, or as an expert. Finally, we have The Child's Hearing and Its Importance for the Definition of Custody Regime in Parental Alienation Cases, Miriam Afonso Brigas. This is a pre-recorded presentation. She is an assistant professor at the Faculty of Law of the University of Lisbon since 2012, with a PhD in the area of historical legal sciences at the same university. Let's give a hand to our presenters.
I'll stay by the mic, I'll go with this one. So, good morning. I found yesterday fascinating, especially like some of Ben's stories and the different PA stories, and there was all different types of them. Mine's a bit different in that, yes, I'm a targeted parent, but I was a widower with a child before being then a targeted parent from a child from a second relationship. And, he talked about men's coping mechanisms, and we're very different. And when my wife died, the Cancer Society did bereaved parenting courses, and we found that the men's suicide rate's very high after losing partners, and we cope in weird ways. My way was I went out and got a pilot's license, which was a strange thing to do. And then when after the parental alienation and all the court cases, I decided I was going to go to college, because when I was younger I had to go to night school and doing an apprenticeship and so on. So this is my time to become a real student and live the student experience. And law was available, so I went and did that. So hello? How's it going on to the next one? There we go. So I've completed, I got a diploma in law, and then I got a bachelor in common law, and then I was admitted to do a PhD. Now, it does focus very much on the Irish family law situation, but it includes parental alienation in high conflict. And I'm looking at regulations, not just the children's rights and the law and how that works, but how it's implemented with the child protection, with the day-to-day elements and the healthcare and so on. This particular presentation focuses just on, I did a review of the case law in the Irish High Court. The district and circuit court cases aren't reported there in camera, so it's very hard. You get very little snapshots of data from them. The European Court of Human Rights are applicable in Ireland, and I see a report on that, or a presentation on that later. So if I have time, I'm going to cover a couple of those. Later on, I'm also going to do some comparative, not at this presentation, with UK and Canada jurisdictions. And then my PhD will add empirical, quantitative and qualitative data by interviews. Just on the Irish context, first of all, so we model ourselves on the US because we're just over a 100-year-old country, but the Constitution is the source of all legislation and lawmaking capabilities. And we introduced we had an amendment to our Constitution, a new Article 42A, children, in 2015. So this brought in the rights of the child, and it made them imprescribable. So the legislators cannot take away rights of a child, or it will be challenged on constitutionality basis. It also brought in the best interests of the child as being paramount. And it brought in how the voice of the child would be incorporated based on their age and their maturity. We had legislation ready to go with that, the Children and Family Relationships Act, and this is quite interesting reading if you're working in PA, where there's a section which is a checklist essentially for judges on what the best interests means. And number one on that is the child's relationship with both parents and grandparents and siblings and extended family, the great Irish family with the cousins and all the rest. So all these other people can be alienated. So there's a checklist there for the judge to go through. We're very poor on the regulation of experts. It was very loose. And the first step was a statutory instrument in 2019, which just says what type of experts can be used. But that is a long way to go yet. Then there is the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child, to which Ireland is a signatory and most other countries, except the United States. So countries under that are audited every 5 years, and there is a process involving the child organisations in the country. So I got involved with an NGO and writing their submission for that, and had the pleasure of attending the United Nations in September last year and again in January of this year, and taking some questions in front of the committee. Also, there's the Convention of, the Court of Human Rights and the European Convention of Human Rights, and we incorporate that into Irish law. Now, this is bigger than the EU. This is countries like Russia and Ukraine are signatories to that as well, and countries implement it in different ways. In Ireland, judicial notice must be taken of the jurisprudence of the decisions, so they do have effective law in Ireland. So I'll go quickly on to then the Irish case law and the Court of Human Rights case law. One context for the social legal context is that Ireland took over the rotating presidency of the Council of Europe last year, and we held an event in Dublin, and it was the Hear Our Voices, Rights and Best Interests of the Child and Parental Separation and Care. There's a link down the bottom there. You probably have to Google it because the link is in the presentation, but the whole thing is recorded. That's 7 hours, 14 minutes in, so you don't want to watch the whole thing. It's all 9 hours up. But Judge Daly, a family law judge, said the number of separations, he saw an 80-20 split on court cases that were resolved more or less by consent, and 20% high conflict, which had significant discord, mistrust, allegation and counter-allegation, all the things you're familiar with, and the contact and custody and access problematic, and children at the centre of the dispute. And as he said, these cases terrify me. Are the children being coached, and I've no training to tell if they are? Are they living at one parent to the exclusion of the other and may have a negative view of the parent? The children, more than anyone, will have to live with the decision of the court. This was picked up in context as well we talked yesterday about COVID being the alienator's dream, so there was a lot of cases of that, and the main Law Society Gazette, the magazine for solicitors, ran a story about a mother using COVID-19 as an excuse to prevent access, and she called this a case of parental alienation. And if we do our mild, medium, severe, this would be on the mild, because the child wanted to go, the mother was just making it difficult. But they then mixed in the sort of estrangement and so on. And, that's sort of pushed over. But they said this was, they believe, the first reference to it in the Irish court. But they're wrong, because there was 11 more cases since 2011. So the Law magazine got it wrong. But the Department of Justice then moved on to do investigation of the concept, and they've reported on that. Then there was the bar review, and the bar review is the barristers who act in the higher courts, the folks in the black robes and the wigs and that. And they did a multi-jurisdiction report, and this made the cover of the bar review. But it cited all England and Wales cases, so that's EW's England Wales Family Court cases, and one Irish case. My format's changed on the Mac, sorry about that. And it didn't cite any of my cases either, and one case that didn't have parental alienation in it. The big news in the Irish context is we have Denise McCartan, who is a psychologist who has represented in cases as an expert and has a published book on it in the Irish context. As I was putting my PhD together, there was a similar one just finished from Northern Ireland, and it was about legal professionals' views on parental alienation, and that's online, you can read that. And then the Department of Justice did their open consultation. And it's ironic, they said, there's no agreed definition, and then they said, this is what it is. But I had the pleasure just the week before I came here of attending the Department of Justice, where they launched their 2 papers after much delay, a Parental Alienation policy paper and a Parental Alienation review of understandings, assessments and interventions. So it's the Department of Justice is talking about this. They're building it into the family law strategy. So when you hear the folks who say it doesn't exist, like it just does, there's no discussion really. Also, there's the Child and Family Protection Agency, TUSLA, and I've been in a consultation process with them for 3 years. They have 4 types of child abuse: neglect, emotional, physical, sexual, and this comes under emotional, and they talk about family conflict, but they're also changing their language in this to talk about coercive control and using children as a coercive control as being something that they need to step into and train people on. So May was a very busy month for us between the publications. The UK also built in parental alienation and coercive controlling behaviours as a means of alienating into their social workers checklist, the famous UN Special Rapporteur. And then another case came up which isn't in my set of documents because it wasn't in the High Court. I knew of the case, but it got a judicial review in the High Court, so it got reported. And the wording on that, they said the fact that the district court found in favour of the applicant on the merits of the complaint that there had been parental alienation on the part of the child's mother. So that was a district court now being reported in the High Court. So the easy way for a judge is not to go in and argue, is it real, is it not, and who agrees with the science? It's like, here's all your citations. You know, you've got all your precedent. We move on to the next thing. There's also some published research on it where some other PhDs have sat in on over 1,000 cases that were in camera. And this is the Irish Journal of Family Law. If you look that up, and Roisin O'Shea did a good piece introducing some quantitative data on that as well. So then my cases, 11 cases. It's the High Court, so you have to be rich to get there. It's a small tip of a very big iceberg. But there are 11 cases going back to 2011. And the first one was 60,000 word judgment. Oh my God. I got swamped in that. Children from the ages of 1 up to 16. About half of them are Irish cases, which means they're within Ireland. And then Hague Convention cases is where a child is abducted across a border. So if they're abducted, they're inbound into Ireland, it's handled in the country where they arrive. So half of them were Hague cases inbound to Ireland. If a child is abducted out of Ireland, it's done in the other country. And then also there's 18 European Court of Human Rights cases. And the first one up there, IS and Others v Malta, is a very accessible case. It's not too difficult to follow, very typical case, very easy to read, very important case. So I started hand coding this originally, and I've stepped back to do it as a PhD using proper tools to do it. But my hand coding, I looked at parental alienation. Was there a discussion in the court? What were the remedies? I looked at the voice of the child. Was it considered? Was it challenged? How was it incorporated into the best interests? Expert reports I won't look at today, or access breaches, but we'll look at some of the domestic violence. And just on the page 1 of that there, you see that the court was satisfied. Sorry, I can't read with these glasses, can I? The court was satisfied that whilst the father was clearly not without fault, the mother had alienated the children from contact with the father. In addition, the mother had set out to undermine and marginalise any expert who considered was giving evidence unfavourable to her. And it was a transfer of residence of one of the children, and the other 2 stayed with the mother. So it was very like the Canadian case talked about yesterday. So in where parental alienation was discussed, the court held that it did exist, and it was a factor in 64% of the cases. It deemed it didn't exist in 18%, and one where it said it fell short of the evidence required for full proof, and one was the judicial review that's not applicable. And you have my database and some of the coding down the bottom there. This theory that it's introduced by abusive fathers, as Ben said yesterday, you know, how ridiculous that is. In this case, it was introduced in 13% by fathers, 6% by mothers, 31% by experts, and 50% by the court itself. Now, there's a bit of double counting there because sometimes it was introduced by the expert and the court and not the parent. But the idea that it's fathers, not true, or abusive fathers, not true. And you see that there was some remedies, there was some transfers. Some of them were transferred into care, either permanently or temporarily. And there was